Welcome, guys. And as in this kind of departure from our typical channel content, but something that is becoming so key and looming so large, I've invited Michael Rectenwald to have a conversation with us. And Michael is, I think, of Roman Catholic descent, his Wikipedia says, from Pennsylvania. So great to have the American contingent with us again. But he's become famous, and I think he's almost had a similar parallel to another notable such as Jordan Peterson, where he was spat out by academia. That is not to be say he was dismissed in any way, but it became an uncomfortable place for him, following the wokery concept that was taking hold of the grand cathedral of wokery, which seems to be academia. Michael, welcome to the show. Nice to have you.
Great to be here, Francis. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, and I think we've got a lot to learn from you, because you were at least right in the belly of the beast. I hope they have sorted your retirement out to a suitable standing so that you can swirl that cognac whilst you're contemplating the Bolshevik agenda. Tell us a little bit on your own background, how it all came about. Give us the feeling of what brought it all on, and then the two big questions I'm going to be asking you so that you can touchstone them early if you like is, how do we reject this wokery, this World Economic Forum, this societal guilt, this whole game that is being projected upon us? How do we go about it? How do we disarm it? That's going to be something that's going to be central, because instead of just dooming everybody out, what's the tools we're giving normal people that want to have normal, sensible, unoffended disagreements and opinion shares? Go right ahead.
Yeah, great questions. So, yes, as you mentioned, I was, a full professor at NYU and teaching in liberal studies and global studies. And, frankly, I was a Marxist. And I was, in the far left. Now, I wasn't indoctrinating students. I didn't believe in that. I believed in providing students with multiple perspectives to understand things. And so I had a multi-perspectival approach. And but nevertheless, things began to bother me on the left, particularly the whole transgender movement and the pronoun proliferation and the pronoun wars. I had posted something on Facebook about a student who at I forget what university right now, WVU, Wolverines, I think they are, in West Virginia here. It was asked to put his pronouns into the portal for the student portal to be called by in the classroom, and he put "Your Majesty" in, which I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious, and I posted a link to it with that comment on Facebook, and all hell broke loose. I had a lot of leftist friends and followers and all that, and even my colleagues attacked me over this. I was called transphobic, and I was called a traitor, and I had betrayed everybody, and I had endangered transgender people. So this is why I call them snowflake totalitarians, because they use their supposed fragility as a weapon to silence others' speech.
Yeah.
And then things built up. There was a conflict with a hire at NYU. I was on the chair for this hire to hire a writing and journalism professor. And I was the chair of this committee, and the other members of the committee, especially one in particular person, was pushing this particular candidate who, when I read her job letter, with academia, you have to write a letter and then your whole portfolio and all that. They couldn't write a sentence. So I said, this person can't write a sentence, though. They can't write. How are they supposed to teach writing if they can't write? And there was grammatical errors, malapropisms, all kinds of outrageous mistakes that I really don't even expect from a freshman. And so they said that we don't teach grammar. I said, we don't teach grammar, but a professor of writing in particular should know grammar. A doctor doesn't well, I won't say what, but they don't do certain tasks, but they could. They know how to. In any case, you get the point. Anyway, they forced me off this committee after this woman attacked another candidate who was a white male, and she was gunning for him, and he was the top candidate I had picked, and he was by far the most qualified, but she destroyed that. They forced me off the committee, forced this woman into the job. She was a black female, needless to say. I'm needless to say in that's why they preferred her. I'm not saying that's why she couldn't write. I'm saying that's why they... Yeah. So I have to be careful on some things, but I'm not a bigot.
Speak freely here. No wrong conclusions.
Yeah. The social justice creed took over the university in the following year. They instituted a bias hotline. That is, you could report the bias infractions or microaggressions and so forth of your professors. The students could. All they had to do is either email or pick up a phone. At Harvard, I think they have an app for doing this. You just open up this app and you report this guy, this woman, this non-binary, whatever they are, they said this and that, and therefore blah, 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 and they open up an investigation, and it's outrageous, right? There was that. They were banning shutting down all these speakers. They had these safe spaces because after Trump's election, they had these safe spaces where they actually had pacifiers and petting animals.
Panic room for those.
Panic room. So I
primal screen therapy. We have a primal screen therapy room where we can just wail.
Yeah. I started to tweet about this under an anonymous Twitter handle called the AntiPC NYU Prof. And sooner or later, I guess my tweets insinuated themselves into one of the student newspaper reporters there, and she reached out to this Twitter handle and said, "You really an NYU professor?" And I said, "Yes," because I was ripping on this stuff by now. And she said, "We'd like to interview you." And I took this interview. I decided to go public after I did the interview. I said, I don't have... Nothing I said here is deplorable. It was definitely a critical perspective. Anyway, within 48 hours of that interview appearing, I was called into the dean's office. The head of human resources was there and basically unannounced, and they kind of, they ransacked me. I mean, it was like a attack. I was pushed in. Yes. What was that?
Ambushed, yeah. Sounds
ambushed. There's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, I can't stand it when I can't find a word. I was ambushed. And then at the same time, this committee called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Group, or the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Group, DIE, was what I call them, condemned me in this open letter to the newspaper saying I was guilty for my thoughts. I was guilty for my thoughts. They actually said that. So I was guilty of wrongthink. I was forced on a leave, pushed out of the department. When I came back from the leave, they put me in the Russian department. I was shunned by over...
Gulag. They said
I have that. It's my own personal gulag. That's what I always say. They put me in this bare metal shell.
Maybe it was retraining.
Oh, it's re-education. Yeah, it was like a gulag. No, it wouldn't move my books. All these bare metal shelves. No supplies. No secretarial service. No copying machine access. Nothing. So, I mean, they just made my life miserable, and then I was like made a pariah on campus. where people wouldn't even get in an elevator with me. So yeah, I mean, it was just really, and it hit the news. It was in the news here. It was national news, and I was on, some talk shows, some major talk shows, and that really drew more ire from these people. Anyway, I left in 2019 with a settlement. It wasn't that, I'm not eating caviar and cognac here, but it wasn't, it was something. And I retired effectively, and so I still have full benefits from them. But the case is that I had a massive gestalt shift after all this. My politics changed totally. My worldview changed totally. I became a civil libertarian first, then an economic libertarian, and then, I mean, it's just, I haven't...
The Damascus moment. It seems like
it was a Damascus moment. Absolutely. I was definitely struck off the horse and saw the light. And so since then, I've been trying to investigate just what's behind all this wokeness. And what is this? Because I realized I'd touched the third rail, because it wasn't just the faculty, but it was the top administrators that came down on me. Big time. They hated me, according to my attorneys. They literally, viscerally hated me. So I had touched the third rail. So I wanted to get to the bottom of all this. And, I believe that the woke agenda is a top-down thing, a top-down phenomenon. I think it's being fed by elites, by subversive elites, as I call them.
Yeah. New York is a cauldron for them, by the way, as a general town, I would imagine.
What was that?
New York is a particularly good catchment area for the kind of profile you're mentioning.
Yes, absolutely. You could say that the whole board of directors of the university were part of this. The administration, I mean, my dean was a Marxist. So, I mean, it was just, I was fine. Oh, they loved me when I was a Marxist. There was no problems. In fact, I was the golden boy. But as soon as I started to criticize this social justice woke ideology, they went insane. They really did.
Yeah.
So very irrational. So anyway, where we're going from there? What's the tie-in? This wokeness, I think. When I started looking recently for this book that I wrote, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda, I saw that this stuff started back with the UN. They started this whole gender craziness. I think so. I think this stuff has been filtering out for decades, and it's finally reached a critical mass.
So my question to come in on this is that this is actually a transnational organizational drive, which the points of academia, particularly on the, not in the middle states, but in not the flyover states, but sort of LA, New York in America, but also then in Paris and London. And this seems to be that academia institutions are sort of the lightning rods and national hubs for precipitating it into the lower echelons and also the next generation, because they are handling the minds and the think of the university experience. I had a bizarre experience with that because I went to a very liberal, I would say probably leftist-leaning university during apartheid era South Africa, where they were actively, understandably supporting the black students against what was immoral. And then I went after a period of years there to the conscription, the military conscription, which was enforcing state. So I had a sort of my own view it from both angles kind of view, one pro-system and one undermining the system. Although there was justice on one hand, today it's not about justice, it's about proliferating a kind of message and contaminating the younger minds so that they carry that through. And it's also got this sort of uneasy solidarity, all for one. Now, that solidarity phrase is very kind of communistic. In other words, it's black individuality and differentiation. And we saw this in terms of, and I'm just going to refer to it as the needlecraft, that you had to do something on account of somebody else or the arrest of society on behalf of them. It was beyond, and not to do was a selfish activity. So we're actually seeing similar weaponry and themes, how they are precipitating thought control, which you referred, and right the way through to language control, because that's the next step. So they're trying to stop you from doing it and enforcing you to use pronouns. And it is a globalized, verbalized mind control, verbal control, and academia seems to be the hot hubs for the nation state's proliferation. And qualifications to execute the job are now secondary to being pro the bigger cause, which now dwarfs being education in a specific profession. How do we fight back against what something that is so in the ether, so broad, so well funded, and so it's almost impossible to arbitrage in the Western world, because it won't be different in a Canadian university or a South African university or a European one as well. We're seeing all of these things. I think you mentioned white male philosophers were removed out of a London university. Just remind us of that anecdote as well.
Yeah, I think it was SOAS in London removed all white philosophers from their curriculum, white male philosophers from their curriculum. So that would be Plato and Aristotle. I mean, this would be the whole canon. I mean, we're talking about, what's left? I mean, really, with feminist, radical feminist, lesbian, I mean, what would be left, really? I'm sorry, it's just true. And I can't deny history. I mean, intellectual history here. So that happened.
And how do we push back against that? What's the most effective way? Because you've now had some pretty in-your-face aggression. You've had people look at you at the elevator and turn heel. You've been probably verbally assaulted countless times during your 2.5 years of tapering out of such a toxic environment, which, by the way, is a gift to you. And everything that happens for a reason, and it's great that you've been removed from that now, especially given your reversion of thought regarding libertarianism and Marxism. How did you deal with, and what is something that the counterforce could utilize effectively? What's your best understanding?
Well, I think that the best way to counter is to really understand what the function of all this is. And I've written about this. I think the function of woke ideology is this. It's not about championing the so-called beleaguered groups that they have put in place as the new protected classes and so forth. It is about eradicating the so-called privilege of the majority. So once you realize the function of this is to guilt trip the majority out of believing that they should have rights, property, positions, and their lifestyles, this is really what it's about. This is an attack on the majority. It's a kind of it's a revenge ideology.
Specific to white male nations, dominant nations like UK, America. Or are we seeing enough examples that's just white fear mongering?
No, I think it's pretty clear it's happening in these places, and not just in these places. This is
but also and more aggressively and more directed, or it's just general, whoever the majority is. I mean, are they in India, for example, guilt tripping the mass Indian population for a minority? I'm pretty sure that the trans and the genderism is there, but at a race, but are they being race baited in the same way?
I can't speak to that too intelligently. I don't have enough knowledge.
Okay. Yeah.
But
my personal impression is that this is very much there's a dark topic that gets you tagged as a conspiracy theorist if you refer to the Kalergi plan, which you may or may not be familiar with. I'd imagine with your writing being extensive as it is, that you have heard of it. That this is almost a elimination or marginalization process towards elimination of quite a particular deemed breed that's considered a threat.
Yes.
And that.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do think I think that's true. And I do talk. I write about this in the book actually. there is been a concerted depopulation campaign that's been underway, and also just a kind of elimination from positions of power and so-called power, or anything really. I mean, is it powerful to have a good job? Is it powerful? Does it mean you're powerful if you accomplish things? They've called it privilege so that this can be eradicated. If you call something a privilege, it can be revoked. If it's a right, then you can't rightfully revoke it. So,
or if it's your skill and diligence, it's impossible to strip a man of his skill, diligence compounded over time. But if you can reframe that through a mind psyop, that's anything, that this jacket that I'm wearing is actually because my skin color is the right color and I was able to get work to pay for it, then I'm no longer entitled to it, in essence.
Exactly. That's why I think it works for this, for this Great Reset, because this Great Reset is about stripping the majority of their property to a great extent, and at least demoting them, reducing their standard of living, reducing their consumption, reducing their mobility, reducing their self-determination generally. And so wokeness just fits in perfectly to indoctrinate people into the belief that, oh yeah, this is all right. I mean, I was always wrong anyway. I should abdicate, whatever I own.
Just give up and hand it all over. Yeah. In essence, we look at a globalized Bolshevism that could be being manifested here with a taste of corporatism. Some would say that makes it fascism almost. That we are actually facing the wealth of the individual. The bourgeois was the great enemy in the Bolshevik Revolution.
Right.
In terms of the wealth, they attacked the farmers. They actually weaponized the working poor against the middle, the bourgeois, as they say. And in essence, a middle class, white Europeans represent the wealthiest population strata of middle classdom. If you're not an elite, or I don't like using that phrase because they think it applies to them as unique. If you're not part of the control structure, let me rather say, and you happen to have wealth through your own skills, we are the targets, we are the marks in all of this to bring us all down, leveling, which I think seems like an on-ramp for their UBI, central bank digital currencies.
Yes.
A reset, which is potentially a bank stripping event, which we blamed on a Russian hack. We've been modeling a lot for this and how best to survive it. We're not sure if this feels like centuries, maybe even millennia in preparation, though. And I'm not sure how
it's been decades, and it's not, I don't know about centuries, because I don't do that kind of history. I do history from the proximate sense of what is most likely a proximate cause here. And I've tracked this back to at least the early 20th century. And it starts with some globalist organizations, frankly. The Council on Foreign Relations, the RIIA, the
Club of Rome, UN.
Club of Rome, the UN, the League of Nations, all of these organizations. And they, interestingly, and the World Economic Forum, they're all roundtable groups. They all derive out of the Rhodes Society roundtable idea. And they're all related, they're all affiliated. And they share ideology, they share policy, and they share members.
Yes, that's the other thing, yeah. You can, once you're in that layer, you can be a member of 3 or 4 of these organizations.
Yeah, it's very incestuous, and these, they function partially, at least in the case of these other ones.
It's almost like the former FDA rotating door, in fact, in terms of rotation, dare I mention.
Exactly. They just rotate in and out of these different roles, and they fail upwards. This is everything they do is, all these policies they enact are always a disaster, but somehow they get promoted into different higher roles and different functions. It's as if that's the real aim, is failure in a sense.
We call it definitely inversion perversion. In other words, to do the damage that leads to the collapse. you're
Yeah.
actually seeing the collapse by flooring policies that you know are going to have unextended outcomes. I just sidebar for an interesting take on a newspaper article in Britain. There's been in Scotland now, post conviction being handed down, there's been a record number of male criminals that have all declaring themselves transgender and are now going, and including rapists of women that are now being put into female jails. So we could actually have the inversion perversion go so far that the criminal class is actually female gender, if you will take the inverted comma female aspect into it. And we're going to need more female prisons, and we might have to repurpose male ones for trans. I mean, it's almost laughable, the extent. And
that's been called anarcho-tyranny, is what's being perpetrated, anarcho-tyranny. Yeah, and that, you know what it means? It means that they let the criminal element run rampant over the population, and then harass and torture the middling class, if you will, and people that are generally law-abiding and sort of doing their thing, and just they torture these people, let criminals run rampant to effectively harass and rob and kill and otherwise torment the majority. So this seems to be part of it. All this is going on simultaneously. So yeah, I mean, it is an perversion inversion, exactly. This is an inversion of the hierarchy, but it doesn't invert the very top, because I think what their real aim is, these people are monopolists in every sense of the term. They want to monopolize the economy. They want to monopolize the political field, realm, the sphere. They want to monopolize culture. They want to monopolize everything. I mean, they want all the spheres of society under their control.
You've had and the reason why I like you bring that concept up, because it's often referred to, and the framing is the failure of capitalism. And my response is, I'll be sure to notify you if any capitalism ever breaks out at some point.
Exactly.
What we have is a competition is sin, oligopoly of corporatism, fascism, that has been dictated from, and the gender controlled actually from an apex of a pyramid through a myriad of transnational organizations that are all need removing. And the point is, where do we go with winning this? Or are we destined to be forced through this washing machine experience and try to do our damnedest to survive? Because, I mean, we're on, this will go out on YouTube. I can't exactly say everyone get his hunting rifle. Here's a list of names and then start taking heads. It's not going to be something that's going to go down particularly well. Is there an undermining in much the same way as they have Trojanized themselves into all the institutions? Is there some element of a similar strategy being possible to take them down, or how do we resist?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I just wanted to make one point about what you mentioned about competition, that they hate competition. Klaus Schwab said at the last meeting last week, in his opening remarks, he said, there's various elements of fragmentation, and the worst area of fragmentation is corporate. He says basically those who go negative, who oppose and confront us. Anyway, he also talked about corporate competition as fragmentation. So they hate competition. If you look at his book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, there's denunciations of competition throughout. This goes back all the way to the early 19th century when the early corporate socialists, King Camp Gillette, decried competition as the greatest evil on the face of the earth. So they don't like the free market. They hate it. They want monopoly. And the socialism is nothing if not a monopoly. So this is just a kind of socialism. I call it corporate socialism. It's also economic fascism. It's also neo-feudalism. It's a lot of things, but it is definitely a kind of corporate socialism. But anyway, in fighting it, I have a 9-point plan in my book. It's called The Grand Refusal. Basically,
Like
at the very least, what we need to be is a remnant of liberty, of the free market, of self-determining individuals. And so to do that, I'm suggesting that we don't buy into, first of all, a lot of their technologies that they're pushing, like the CBDC, of course, digital identity, naturally, where this is a complete database of your every move from cradle to grave, and it'll be attached to a social credit score, probably become something like a social credit score, and it'll be attached to the CBDC, and it'll be a political profile. So we need to just refuse these technologies. But to do so, we need to have parallel economic structures in place.
point.
Yeah, I mean, you can't drop out of this system unless you have another one to go to.
Yeah.
And I think that these parallel economic systems or structures, and this is exactly what the dissidents and the Soviet bloc established. They established parallel structures, which were somewhat inclusive of economic structures of free trade between like-minded individuals in a network. Now, this is not leftism and marching in the streets. This is actually more subversive than that. It is non-participation in their ESG, economic system withdrawal, all funding and all banking from ESG-abiding banks and ESG-pushing asset managers and funds. All of that is part of it.
There was a small win, actually, with the Texas southern states pushing back against BlackRock on the ESG agendas, given oil and inflation and prices. So they haven't had it all their own way, and I think we have to.
That's right.
We have to enjoy a few moments of obstacle for them as well, because we got to
absolutely
crap while we're rebuilding.
19 attorneys general in these 19 mostly southern states have wrote a letter to Larry Fink telling them, we're not going along with this. We don't want our money in ESG. So they're going to pull out. I think there's a big movement to pull out of that. BlackRock, pull out of State Street, UBS, Vanguard Group, and all these ESG mongers, I'll call them, really is what they are. And they're a cartel. I call it the Wolf Cartel. Is a cartel movement, and therefore it's a shared monopoly scheme. Is what it is.
We've got to laugh for want of crying. I think I'm a great exponent of black humor and keeping your good health and mental fortitude, whilst being at the vanguard of being principle based. Because I'm not even sure we get to win. There's people who will choose the winning team, and there's people that will choose the right principle.
Right team. Yep, absolutely.
And the right team is one inherent in principle, self-determination, and freedom. Win or lose, you always should choose the right team, not the winning team.
Right.
Because the winning team will tear you up and turn on you in time. I mean, you're an ex-Marxist that was within a Marxist institution by all accounts.
I was on the winning side.
And you started to have a few too independent thoughts. And you were literally, you were almost got away well, I would argue. You could have been stripped of pension. You could have had all sorts of, tarred and feathered verbal equivalents, social media equivalents, framed, who knows what, because
all that could have happened. Yeah, they could have framed me. Yeah, they started that. In fact, just to go back a little bit, there was this flurry of emails from these contingent of woke mobsters denouncing and defaming me and all this. And they one of them, who was let's just put it this way, not attractive to me, tried to suggest that I had somehow made unwelcome overtures toward her. Okay, I don't want to say this, but I'll say it anyway. I only like size 2 and below. So this person didn't qualify. In case they happen to come across this, you're a sow, okay? So there. But anyway, sorry, I had to do that.
No, never mind. We have a cackle. I mean, I often think back to Dominic Strauss-Kahn's kicking out at one point and subsequent replacement, and I wonder if he made a few independently voiced comments just prior to suddenly turning into a hotel maid rapist, and then shamed and tossed out. And I don't have any specific information. I don't profess, but I'm a speculator, and I'm guessing he got shifted aside, and he's not easily going to make money on the speaking circuits, given how they tarred and feathered him on his exit on the way out the door. He literally ran through everybody's legs and took a paddywhack, basically, in the best sense. And I remember him saying a few things that were a little bit more independent, a little bit more our way, and I think it didn't sit well with these controllers. And they regularly have these internal disciplining events, I think.
Struggle sessions, indeed.
Yeah. So for those that think they will fit in well in the winning team, you're going to bite your bottom lip. If they are to be the winning team, which I'm not conceding yet, you will bite your bottom lip and you'll grow a cancer tumor on what you'll have to look past and look through, and the words you're going to have to recant, and the shame you're going to be, especially if you happen to be white Anglo-Saxon and P standing up. You're going to get it in the neck always. And the lady's not much better. Anyway, so I love that notion of parallel systems. So we talk about self-reliance, we talk about community farmers markets, getting rural, getting out of the hyper-urbanized pod scene, because it's no surprise that California and New York are pretty much the very dense places. Getting south, if you're in the States. I'm not in America, but we have a large American audience. So we know that people are flying the blue to red states, and many people are saying don't bring your attitude with you, but otherwise welcome. But could this also be new Trojanizations into these once heralded institutions?
Yeah, this is all very possible, in fact. And as people are trying to get out of cities, they're trying to corral us into these 15-minute cities. This is a new project that's also coming out of the World Economic Forum and the UN. They want everybody living in a city pod within 15 minutes by walking or bicycle of everything they need.
And that's the measure, because you'll own nothing, and that includes a car.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're going to be riding a bike, a unicycle, or a skateboard, whichever your UBI will afford you. Else it's good old Shanks
exactly.
Which was your feet.
Yeah, they could infiltrate these parallel structures, indeed. And I mean, anything is possible with this crowd. They could even be floating people that are talking about parallel structures and who are total frauds. I don't know what to make. I also are encouraged, and part of this plan is that we need to find some defectors among the power structure. There has to be some. Now, I don't know. Elon Musk is a very ambiguous character in my mind.
Don't trust him.
I don't either. The Neuralink thing is very, very, very frightening. And also, he's not really changed the algorithms on Twitter. They're still written by leftist totalitarians. And I wrote all about this 5 years before anybody knew this. I mean, knew it in the sense that they had evidence that, it's in my book, Google Archipelago, as I've analyzed the social justice permeation and takeover or whatever of big tech, and even the algorithms were written by leftist totalitarians.
Yeah.
And that's true. We know that now. So, we can only do what we can, and the best we might end up with as being a remnant for the future.
Yeah.
And if we can...
Mohicans. Although I've already cooked my my duck with that one. But we could at least aspire to that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that may be the best we can do. and that would be a remnant that practices the free market, a remnant who believes in liberty, a remnant that believes in self-determination and exercises it, a remnant that doesn't abide tyranny and monopolists of any kind, whether they be corporate socialists or Bolsheviks, whatever brand they come in, stakeholder capitalists, as they call it. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned 9 points, and parallel systems, I think, came in 1 or 2 or 3, the third point. Do you want to run that list as a closeout for us for our...
Yeah, sure. Let me run it down. 1 second. Let me get it in front of me. I pretty much have it memorized, but I might skip something if I don't. So first of all is to reject the CBDC. Second is to reject the internet.
On that point, just, if I can stop you on each one just for a small comment. To reject the CBDC, you're going to have parallel money. That means investment in gold, small fractions of gold and silver. You're going to probably need secrecy cryptos, although my concern is they're probably Trojanized and tracked, but you might need some role for that. And you're might need a role for barter and being close to people so that you can discuss and negotiate that barter and have standing arrangements. Carry on. Sorry. Next, so reject the CBDC.
Great, I'll let you comment. And then reject the Internet of Bodies technologies and the installation of devices in your body.
So the transhumanism agenda, chip in brain, chip in hand. Where do you stand on the Internet of Things that is rolling out? I mean, I'm pretty sure the shortage of chips for cars is a repurposing exercise that we've had, because the manufacture of chips is pretty much robotic and mechanical. It doesn't require labor, and you can't blame it on COVID. So I'm assuming that...
I think the Internet of Things is going, it spills over directly into the Internet of Bodies. It is about data tagging every piece of every resource that exists, but it's also about data tagging every human being and all their organ systems and everything else. So I think the Internet of Bodies, at least, we have to keep these technologies off our bodies and out of the inside of our bodies as well.
And start thinking of a life eventually. I mean, I make income still from being in the internet, so I'm a little bit in the matrix, but Faraday cage in car and at home, and you chuck them all in there. You get a speaker and you pipe some absolute nonsense for the algorithms, a bit of counterfuge, do various things like that. Laptops, an entire space where you put them in, lock them away. No listening devices. We do project on wall rather than, on screen rather than TVs, because they're all listening devices now. Elimination of listening devices. This war, funny enough, on stoves, wood fire stoves, gas stoves. These are self-perpetuating, not reliant on grid electricity, where the smart grid is coming in, and on gas and on battery. They want everything in battery and smart grid, which is another reason why Tesla is the battery car guy, because you'll be delivered to the police station or you'll be remotely disabled for a microaggression and all of these other concepts. So having a diesel-powered pre-2006 Land Rover Discovery, for example, where there's entirely mechanical, not chip and bot, these are all investments that will help you be one of the last of the Mohicans along with me. And other vehicles too. I'm not putting in a sponsored bid here for old Land Rovers. That's very useful. So the rejection of transhumanism means we've already got to unwind quite a lot of what we're already doing.
Yeah, that's right. Now, they're just a note on that. What they're going to try to do then, well, they're already going to do it. They're going to try to figure us as Luddites, as neo-Luddites, and right. So we need to be able to, we're not rejecting technology per se. We're rejecting
the wrong kind of progress.
Right. This is the surveillance system. Yeah, this is surveillance technology. This is not, we're not going to be connected to the, they talk about the brain cloud interfaces. If we get brain cloud interfaces, they're not going to use it to let us have access to all the world's knowledge unlimited, like Kurzweil said. This is going to be like Yuval Harari says. It's going to be used to put algorithms in our heads so that we don't make any false moves or have any false thoughts. And I'm not kidding. This is all very very real. This is all very real possibilities. So I've looked at
Bill Gates registered I think it was the 666 patent. It had all the sixes in it. I can't quite remember. That actually had crypto wallets being chip topped up on account of press ups or physical labor done, all embedded in your system. So a crypto system, a patent is registered with a chip for you to exercise in and to earn essentially what could be part of your UBI. Whoops, you haven't done your press ups today. No bread for you. No tokens or top up. So the gamification of life via blockchain crypto inserted transhumanistic agenda, where essentially people get to determine whether you do like you say, is absolutely terrifying. I think instead of, like you say, they'll try characterize us as dinosaurs or progress haters, as if we are some kind of off-splinter group of the Amish or the, Aboriginal.
Exactly.
So the game is to just be pro-sovereignty, personal sovereignty, physical personal sovereignty, and go out from there.
They'll try to frame us like I don't know if you ever saw the movie Existence. There's a group of underground. There's game. It's a game. It's a movie about virtual reality games. And anyway, there's this group. They're called the realists, the realist underground, and they're figured as these Luddite lunatics. This is how they're going to try to figure us. Anyway, we reject digital identity inclusion, which is the way they're selling this. Means
the problem with that, the challenge with rejecting the digital identity is that you started to put it in your passports already. They're scanning things that we already pay with it. We're very used to it. We want to still travel. We have family dispersed over the globe. Are we going to have one arm in the system and one arm out, or are we going to be eventually they're going to force you? You're going to have to fork one way or another. And that could mean the end of your freedom of movement in any way, which they're going to do to the people who take the chip and comply with the 15-minute cities anyway. So it's better to get rural and have an old car, as I was saying. But you might not ever get to travel again. If there's places on your bucket list you want to see, you need to get out and see them. And if there's family members far and abroad that might not be around in 20 years' time, you might want to go see them. Because the music might stop and then you're sitting on the chair where you are, and that's where you're sitting. Is there not that element? What's your feel with that? Because being able to reject that is going to get harder and harder. It's going to be made.
It's going to get harder and harder, and they're going to use it. They're going to try to introduce it largely through commercial means, like through banks, through credit cards. And when I say digital identity here, this is a database about your every move. This is an identification. This is a kind of database that tracks you from cradle to grave, includes vaccine status, probably, ESG compliance. And
Yeah.
So my sense is that, it might be possible to have one arm in and one arm out, but I would wonder if that doesn't eat the whole person eventually.
It will, and you'd have to fork. In other words, you'd have to let lapse your one arm in if you're buying time.
Probably.
I think we should all be preparing to go pretty primitive for a while. Good old battery wind-up radios, fire stoves, and solar panels. Sure, with batteries if you like, but not necessarily attached to a smart grid. It won't be worth it. Depend. They're never going to give you the right to become a rentier extractor. The goal is always you are the mark and you will. So the notion that you're going to be selling and being paid the substantial income for your solar panel investment that's pumping off-peak electricity into some grid is a fool's notion. It's this cool tech, and you can make money and you can, your car will be used to, no. Don't be sold a patsy story to be, you're being seduced into your cell with, hamburgers and your favorite meals and Chardonnay. And next thing, the door slams shut.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. It's a seduction into the grid and to stay there.
Yeah.
So I've already been, I already mentioned practicing the free market and divesting from ESG entirely, including banks. Of course, the leading banks are ESG freaks. They're all part of this regime, so you have to find banks, if you even use banks. But I don't say get into other banks. I'm just saying get out of these banks. Bank of America being the leading edge. Brian Moynihan, the CEO, is a stakeholder capitalism exponent to the nth degree. These people are nuts, and we can't feed that beast. Then there's things you can do as long as there's some possible leverage in the state, we need to put pressure on these legislators and representatives to withdraw from the World Economic Forum, withdraw state pensions and other monies from ESG, all that. We talked about that already. And then, I think that we should try to find the elites, so-called elites, as you pointed out. That makes them feel like they're superior, which they do believe they are. But we need to find some defectors, because this will help make more public our defection. And then, then it's this, and we have to create a network of like-minded individuals. This is part of this helps sustain the parallel economy, but it has to be broader than that as well. It has to be a communications system.
Ham radio. Get your ham radio.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Radio. Because with mobile telephony is failed. The amount of people, we've all removed having fixed lines nowadays because of everybody has a mobile. And you're just talking into their recording box. You're blogging your life to them. If never mind Facebook. So we do need to withdraw a lot more. We need to make more steps of withdrawal from them. Apart from that, bad for your health, full stop. And the smaller those band waves, the more destructive they become as well. So a real planned withdrawal from the system, and then a citizenship that keeps us small, motivated, well confidenced up, communicative, and undermining guerrilla. We have to revert to guerrilla warfare now, because it's almost as if they are the British, storming the Boers in South Africa. You have to revert to man on horseback and pot shot from afar and tie them up, make their size work against them, make their lack of cohesion, because there'll still be arbitrage across nations, even though they're all following the ability to implement at the same rate. You need to highlight it. That's our war now. It's a guerrilla war. It's the last of the Mohicans. Is there anything else on your list, Mike?
And that's basically it. I said the free market. I said all that, and so I think that's it. It's a pretty basically general thing that's very capacious and is flexible. It could include many other details, but that's the basic principles and some of the specifics.
I love it. And for people to find some of the books, tell us the list of titles of books and how people can find your website and make a purchase and engage and support you, and thank you also for your message and to get some of that detail on your research. Okay,
great. Yeah, so starting with the books that came only after my transformation. Springtime for Snowflakes.
Springtime, great title, love it. Springtime for Snowflakes. Yeah.
Yes, Springtime for Snowflakes. Google Archipelago.
Google Archipelago.
Yes. Beyond Woke.
Beyond Woke. Yeah.
Yeah. And Thought Criminal.
Thought Criminal. Yes. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. And then the latest, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty.
Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty. Love that. I love all those titles, actually, to the bone. And to circumvent the one world order retailer of choice in the internet in the sky, can people buy direct from your site?
Yes, absolutely. That's why I try to avoid big digital, as I call them. You can buy there, but I have direct sales directly from my site, and you don't have to use PayPal. I use also another service called Align Pay, which is
Align Pay. Yeah, I'm going to have to go look into that one. So if I can just pronounce, we will put in your internet details on the edit below, but Michael's just so that I verbalize it as well. Michael, Michael, Rectenwald, Recten, and then Wald, WALD.com. MichaelRectenwald.com. Buy from there. Those amazing titles that you have just heard. Support Michael rather than the corporatocracy fascists of note. Michael, thank you very much. Do you have a parting message for the people watching this content?
Yeah, just, we have to be Howard Beale in the movie Network. We're mad as hell and we're not going to take this anymore. And we need to say this to each other and recognize that there is a legion of us out there. And so self-recognition of each other is absolutely essential for doing this.
Absolutely. So get angry. I like what you said. I want to highlight that. Get angry. Do something. Be the leader that the world needs you to be, and aggregate others around you. De-gaslight your friends that are being attached to the same, because it's as much a war of the mind and the word as it is any other kind. That's been absolutely fascinating. I've enjoyed it immensely. Michael Rectenwald, thank you for giving us of your time today.
Great pleasure being here. Thanks so much, Francis.
Absolute pleasure. Bye-bye for now.
Okay, bye-bye.